And welcome everyone to the Career Management Group meeting. I'm Kathy Kilroy, the CMG Program Committee Chair. My company, CMP, Career Management Partners, along with the Overture Group, are the sponsor companies for the CMG. There's Mike giving us a wave. Thanks, Mike. So a couple of announcements before we get started. You're all putting your contact information in the chat. That's great. Continue to do so as you dial in. Please place yourself on mute for the presentation. You're welcome to stay on the screen and keep your camera on, and we encourage you to do so. You can ask questions throughout the presentation in the chat at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be taking them throughout. So we want to make it as interactive as possible. So please keep those questions and comments coming. And FEI Chicago will offer you 1 CPE credit for this meeting this morning. You must attend the full session to get that credit. And in order to get it, you email Susan at info@feichicago.org, and she'll send that out to you. I want to welcome, we have many guests on the phone with us today. I want to welcome you to FEI and let you know that FEI is offering a free 6-month trial membership, which I encourage you to take advantage of. I'm a longtime member and sponsor of FEI and have developed so many wonderful friendships and learned so much in the process, gotten so much out of FEI. We're a very active chapter. And as a FEI member, you'll have the opportunity to connect and build relationships with other financial leaders in Chicagoland and nationally as well, both for networking and to benchmark best practices. We sponsor both live and virtual professional development forums, and you stay current as well as earn CPE credits. There's a number of leadership opportunities for you on local and national committees and a chance to boost your career. And if anyone's interested in the program committee specifically, please reach out to me. We'd love to have a conversation and bring you in. There's also online access through our career portal that keeps you connected nationally. And additionally, you're welcome to share your FEI membership opportunities with your financial colleagues in your organizations. So please reach out to Susan to take advantage of that membership opportunity. And now let's get started. I am very pleased to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Donna Marino, to help us reboot for 2022 and discuss how to set yourself up for success. Donna is a psychologist, executive coach, and author. She's an expert at helping people sustain peak performance and specializes in working with executives and family-owned businesses. Donna's been a favorite FEI speaker, as well as for other organizations on leadership topics, executive burnout, and managing your mindset. Welcome, Donna. I'll turn it over to you and let you share more.
Well, thank you so much, Kathy. I appreciate that kind introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Everyone can see it? Yes. Okay, terrific. And as Kathy said, we're going to talk about developing that winning mindset for 2022, especially as many of us are experiencing some level of burnout, COVID fatigue. Some of us are remote, some of us are back in the office and hybrid, and just really kicking off the year with a positive mindset, despite what may be going on around us at home and in the world. So Kathy gave me a very nice introduction. I've been in mental health for 25 years. I've been an entrepreneur for 14. I've worked with executives from companies such as Nestle and Cisco, Morton Salt, McDonald's. And I specialize in making those career transitions, family businesses, and really increasing your impact and value, which of course includes preventing burnout and sustainable peak performance. I want you to take this statement away with you today. Your external results are a reflection of your internal process. Okay, so what's going on outside of you is like a mirror to what's going on inside of you. what you're thinking, what you're feeling is projected outwards and shows up in your results. You might have heard statements like what you think you become, or like attracts like. A great one about gratitude, which we'll talk about later, is appreciation appreciates. So really, that is what we want to be thinking about as we go through this presentation today. And it does all start with our mindset. So I'm sure we've noticed this before, when you wake up in a bad mood, right? Or, get out on the wrong side of the bed and you notice that, you spill your coffee, you get a ticket on the way to work. It's this cascade, right? And so that's where the like attracts like. Our mindset is in a negative space, and then we see this cascade of events. So what is mindset? Carol Dweck is kind of famous for her book about mindset. And it's interesting to me because mindset, I noticed, became a buzzword. I noticed it about 5 or so years ago. You hear a lot of people talking about it, at least in my circles. And I thought it was kind of funny because really what it is cognitive psychology, which has been around since the 60s. And what mindset is our consistent beliefs and thinking, and the way we handle situations, the way we predict what's going to happen next. Things like self-fulfilling prophecy, catastrophizing, but also those positive mindsets, right? It's not all negative, but when we get into those spaces of negativity, we can create these self-defeating cycles for ourselves. Just like that example I shared about, getting up on the wrong side of the bed. But for some people, it becomes really an ingrained way of thinking. Sometimes these people pick careers in, insurance underwriting, things like that, where they can see the negative. So there can be, a positive of seeing the negative, but it doesn't generally translate to a positive mindset in the rest of your life, and can really impact career, relationships, and your level of success. So one thing to think about are automatic thoughts. And this is a term from cognitive psychology. These are the thoughts that happen so rapidly because we're well trained in them and we think them all the time that often we don't even recognize that's what we're thinking. And I like to explain it as a brain superhighway. So something we know that we learned in psychology was our brain is actually plastic. It's malleable. Whereas before we thought once you hit adulthood, it was fixed and you couldn't make any changes. Luckily for us, we can. But the brain superhighway with your automatic thoughts is like getting on the highway, going 100 miles an hour and arriving at your destination. And you've been there so many times, you don't even remember the path. Excuse me. So it's that split second. And we'll talk about how to reveal what those automatic thoughts are so that they don't become problematic, right? One of the great things about the plasticity is that we can retrain the brain. So once we become aware of what these automatic thoughts are, we can choose to think something else. And how I think about that is that we're digging up a new highway and filling up the old highway with the dirt, right? And so we're creating this new superhighway that's going to be more helpful to us. Any questions so far, Kathy?
No, not yet, Donna.
Okay. So why is this important? So in cognitive psychology, we really believe that the thoughts come before the emotion. And this is a great way to figure out what your thinking is. Because if you miss the thought, you can tune in to what you're feeling. Our belief is that the thought is what causes you to feel. And then that feeling, right, causes you to act, which then ends up in the result, which often then confirms the thought because the thought started the pathway. This is where that term comes in, right, about the external results reflecting your internal, because the pathway starts with the internal. So when we change that, we end up changing our result. Okay, so you can see what it looks like here, right? Here's the thought. I'm not good enough. People will judge me, right? This is often thoughts that come with public speaking. We all know that public speaking is one of the most common fears, which can lead you to feeling anxious. In this case, with the public speaking, you can see how that anxiety plays out. And then you may avoid public speaking opportunities, which the result then, it's not on here, the result part that comes after the behavior, but the result in this case could be limiting your career, right? You don't have as much exposure, you're not demonstrating your expertise. And then what happens? You go back to that thought, I'm not good enough. And you can see how this cycle can very easily develop, especially if this thought is an automatic thought that you're not aware of. And this thought really can be deep, can come from childhood, right? And so that's part of how it becomes automatic, is that you've been thinking it for so long. And many of our thoughts do come from our childhood, from our early lessons. So tapping into those is very important. People often don't examine those long-term thoughts, right? Especially if they're automatic. You don't think about thinking them, right? Metacognition. You don't think about thinking them. And so we don't challenge them. One of my mentors taught me an expression, which I found extremely valuable, which is beliefs are merely information that we've decided is true. And so we may have these belief systems from early on that are no longer serving us. And that's where it's really important to reflect on the automatic thoughts, to reflect on your beliefs, and to ask yourself, is that true? Is that helpful? What would be a better belief or thought? And some of them you're going to say, absolutely, this helps guide my life. Faith might be one of those beliefs that started at a young age, being taught in the home, and you might feel, absolutely, this has guided my life in a positive direction. But you might also look at belief systems about your identity, yourself. Money is often a hot one, and you probably see that as FEI, that people have a lot of emotional beliefs about money. And that's kind of where it stems from. And you can see how that cycle plays out, and then how it impacts their behavior around money and their results. So, right, the same old thinking leads to the same old results. And we've all heard the definition of insanity, right? Is doing the same thing over and over, but expecting different results. So what do we strive for when it comes to our mindset? We've talked about kind of the negative aspects of it. Let's look at the retraining and the positive. So this does come from Carol Dweck's work, this discovery of both the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. So some of the things we've just talked about reflect that fixed mindset, right? I'm not good enough. I'll never achieve. I'll make a fool of myself during public speaking. And you can see some of the statements there in that head, and just the idea that these are permanent, right? This is never going to change. I'm stuck in this place, and not being able to see the flexibility that we've talked about, that the mind actually has. Whereas the growth mindset looks at those positive statements and looks at them as opportunities for growth, opportunities for change. And you can see some of the statements in there, including failure is an opportunity to grow. When we first moved to Aurora, my kids were in 3rd and 5th grade, and their school had actually decided that for the year, their focus was mindset. And all of the teachers read Carol Dweck's book, and a lot of the parents did. And there were signs up all over the school encouraging this. And the best thing that I heard, which came out of my daughter's class, was that whenever a student made one of these fixed mindset statements, like, I'm no good at math, I'm not no good at reading, I'm never going to get this, those kinds of statements, she would have them say the word yet at the end. So I can't learn this new problem yet. I can't read this book yet. And you can see how just by adding those 3 little letters, it completely changes the meaning of the word and offers that flexibility and that potential and hope at the end of it. So some of the results, that we get of that fixed mindset are increased self-doubt, failures, there we go, are internalized and seen as permanent. We've talked about that. People feel like they have to prove themselves because with a fixed mindset, they often feel less than, have lower confidence, and just feel like there's a lot of negative feedback coming at them. And that's where the defensiveness comes in and the proving themselves. They also will try to, avoid errors. And so what you can see here is potentially perfectionism, but also procrastination, because procrastination is often a manifestation or a projection of that perfectionism. People are afraid of making the mistakes and it not being perfect, so they avoid it until the last minute. And avoidance is one of the most common reactions to anxiety. And again, in this area, they're focused more on preventing the mistake than they are in growing. Right? So you can see how that could limit someone's career. Whereas in the growth mindset, again, failure is an opportunity. You see higher levels of confidence, resilience, perseverance. They see things as just fluid and ever changing. Everything is temporary, and they're focused on trying more things. You might see people with like adventure activities and things like that. They're going to try the public speaking, and they're going to be willing to be a little more vulnerable because it's an opportunity to grow. So they take feedback better. They're less defensive, and they're willing to be in the spotlight in order to grow. And you can see how that might impact your career and your success.
Donna, can you share a couple quick tips to shift that mindset, maybe in the moment, like when we catch ourselves moving into that stage?
Right. That's going to be coming up, Kathy, in the next part of the presentation. So just hold that thought and we'll get to it. And if you have additional questions about that, let me answer those. Is that all right?
Perfect.
Okay. So here's a challenge for you, and you can take this home with you, this challenge, but I want you to think about just one or two thoughts that you need to reframe. Okay. One or two thoughts that are sabotaging your results. Okay. Perhaps you can even come up with them right now in your mind. And if you feel comfortable doing this, you can go ahead and share that in the chat. Okay. So coming up with a thought, it's easier to start with one, obviously. And then thinking about, how does this thought make you feel? Right? Like, I'm afraid of failure, or failure would ruin my career, things like that. And thinking about how that makes you feel. And then what's the action that stems from that for you? So I want you to take yourself through this process that we're talking about. And when you've taken it through, I want you to ask yourself, is that what you want? Is that how you want to feel? Is that how you want to show up? What's the cost to that? Even, are you willing to put up with that in your life? What's the cost if you don't change that thought?
And if somebody wants to come off or come on screen rather than put anything in the chat,
Sure.
to share a thought, I know it's asking you to be vulnerable with the group, my friends, but it's a powerful way to share that thought and have Donna help walk through it. Even just share the thought, and then we can help process that. I mean, there might be concerns around job search. It could be around sales success, or a whole host of things that, we've seen others share in the past.
Yeah. I'm happy to do that.
Okay, no takers.
All right. You guys are a shy group. All righty. Well, let's move on, as Kathy said, to the solutions and accountability.
Wait, Donna, 1 second. Okay.
All right.
Here, thank you. All right. So, thanks for sharing. Barrett said, trying to make the best of my medical situation.
Yeah. That's a good one. And I appreciate the vulnerability that it takes to share that. Do you want to come off mute?
Sure.
Okay. So can you share with me specifically what that thought might be around your medical situation?
Well, as most people know, I was recently diagnosed early December with acute myeloid leukemia, which requires not only a fairly strict medical treatment, but because of a now very suppressed immune system, has me confined to roughly house arrest, except for going to the medical and barbershop conditions where I'm medically advised not to go to places with groups. And I'm fairly social and do like to get out and see people, kind of stuff. And this, shall we say, restriction is frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I'm using digital platforms to the max, but they never were and they still aren't a good substitute.
Yeah. And do you live alone?
No, my wife here too, and it obviously restricts her activities to some extent because of my inability to ward off infections primarily.
Yeah. Well, first, let me say that I'm very sorry that you're struggling with this. And one of the things that is important, I think, even before diving into the reframe, is to focus on compassion for yourself, right? And knowing that there are going to be good days and bad days, both physically and mentally, and having a certain level of acceptance for that.
Well, I've expected that, and they're kind of, most of the days are pretty good days. I feel pretty good, except for I have this nasty side problem.
Yeah. One of the things, so a potential reframe of that, and this may or may not land for you, so it's just an example, but a potential reframe is, this is a time for me to build more closeness with my wife, or to even deepen our relationship. This is a time for me to reflect and take advantage of the pause and the quiet, and to gain insight. This is a time to, evaluate and know what's most important to me. This is a time for me to learn additional ways to connect with people and try to feel that fulfillment despite not being able to be in the same room with them. Right? So these are just some ideas. The other thing that I would really recommend as a solution is to start keeping a gratitude list or a gratitude journal. Something that I choose to do. This is just my personal beliefs, but I write a thank you letter to God every day. I like using actual thank you notes, right? Because it just puts me in that mindset. And then I keep them in a box. I keep them in a box that I can always go back to and read them. And I think about what's happened that day that has really brought a smile to my face, or just this winter, I'm grateful for a heated home, right? It's just one of those things. And it's very important that the gratitude comes from your heart. Sometimes people, it comes from the head of what they think they should be grateful for. It's very important to move that into the heart. That's what really makes gratitude powerful. And it will help you try to spot all day, what you're going to write for your gratitude. And so you're also retraining your brain to focus on the positive. In a study with people who are experiencing depression, they compared a group who made a list of 3 things they were grateful for, and a group that was on antidepressants. And what they found was they both equally recovered or felt better, but that those that did the gratitude list, the effects were longer lasting. And so that can be a powerful technique to then help support the reframe. But one thing that it's important to mention is that as we're going through this process, it's not about ignoring our feelings or ignoring the reality around us. It is a conscious choice, but you do have to feel the feelings first. And there's an expression, what we resist persists. And so I think that acknowledgement, acceptance, grace for yourself first is an important part of this process, because we don't want to be in serious situations like this. We don't want to be dismissive of what's happening to us. We don't want what you've maybe heard of as toxic positivity, where you feel like you have to be happy and positive all the time. So it's kind of a combination, if that makes sense to everyone.
Yeah. I haven't changed quite that sharply. I'm just more a little bit frustrated, a little bit with some of the conditions. Obviously, I still try to do some consulting work as long as I can do it remotely, and that's still continuing.
That's good.
Thank you, Barrett, for sharing that, and for Donna walking us through great techniques on how, to put things into practice that will help us in all areas of our life, and for many of us dealing with either health issues or our family members are too. We have another example, Donna, that I think will resonate. This comes from Mahan, and this will resonate with so many people. I get nervous to run meetings with senior management.
Yep. If you'd like to take yourself off mute.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Hello.
if you'd be willing to share again, like we just did, the specific thought, right? Because you gave us the feeling. Let's go into the specific thought that happens when you're in that situation.
The feeling, the specific situation is not being prepared enough of what questions might come up, and being able to say, I've used that. I don't have the answer right now, but I'll get back to you. But generally, it's the nervousness of looking good and not failing or not messing up at the meeting.
So I think there's a range of thoughts going on there, and you might be getting slammed by all of them at once, right? As they intermingle, which can really escalate that anxiety and nervousness, right? So I hear you.
To give you a simple example, like you're prepared for the meeting, everything's set. You have a technical difficulty in the beginning. So the first 1 or 2 minutes, that just throws you off. Like the meeting starts off on a bad note right away. Like not for everybody, but just I feel like, oh man, we have technical issues. Nothing that I could control, but it's just it starts that process of negative feeling.
Yeah. So something I'd like to share with you before we go through this process, because I certainly can relate. And I was the keynote speaker at a virtual event, a conference, and we could not get my slides to show up no matter what we did. And we had done a run through before, and it just didn't work. And so I had to go through, the entire presentation without any slides. I could see them, but they couldn't. And at the end, I was still the top rated speaker at the end of the event. And so, something like that can be something to keep in mind. One of the things that I always remind myself, because some groups still get nervous before public speaking. And one of the things that helps me is to say that this audience, this group, is filled with people that want to see me succeed, right? Nobody goes into a meeting or something like this saying, boy, I hope this guy does a bad job, because that's how I want to spend my time. So just remembering that these people are rooting for you, things like challenging that thought, I'm not prepared. Looking at the evidence, right? This is another technique. When you have these thoughts like I'm not prepared, challenging that. What's the evidence that I am prepared? I created my slides. I went over the material. I double checked it. All of those things that say, no, there's no evidence for that. That's a thought I'm having, but there's no evidence. And then changing it, I am well prepared. Things like I can manage anything that may not go the way I envisioned it. If you're a spiritual person, you may say, or even not. I often will say, give me the words, right? Give me the words that they need. Let me be of service, kind of like let me be a vehicle for what they need to hear today. And also, when you're worried about those, they're going to ask me questions I won't have answers to. I think your response is absolutely perfect. And just saying before you go in, nobody expects me to have all the answers. Nobody expects me to be able to predict all of their questions. Things like honesty is valued, right? Every person I know who's in a position of power says that they would rather someone say, I don't have the answer for that yet, but I will get back to you, than try to fumble their way through it or give an answer that's not correct. So that part, you're doing correct. Also, when we get back to the evidence, and I know I'm throwing a lot of different ideas at you, but another piece of the evidence is your results of your presentations. So has there been a calamity? Has there, my guess is that most of your presentations go really well. And so looking at those results in order to challenge these thoughts. So with kids, if you guys have kids, I teach them to be detectives, right? Be a good detective, look for the evidence and challenge what doesn't have evidence.
Great examples. Thank you. Thank you. And Donna, we'll circle back. Maybe we have, one or two others, but why don't we move forward? I know we've got some great material to continue. And if we have time at the end, or if anybody would like to stay on beyond the call, Donna said she's happy to do that. We can cover a couple of other things. All right.
Yes, sounds good. All right. So this is the section that we get into solutions and accountability. And you've already seen the process that you can go through. So I took you through this process, right? We identified the thought. And you can see in both examples, it was easier to identify the feeling first, right? I feel nervous about this, but we need to then backtrack that. What is the actual specific thought we're having? Because that's what's producing the feeling and the action. And that's what we need to reframe. And then once we do reframe it, we want to notice the results, because what we're doing then is reinforcing the positive in our brain. We're reinforcing, giving ourselves a reward. So you get a nice little shot of dopamine, which is the reward neurotransmitter in your brain. And so when you look at, okay, I reframe this thought, and when I reframe this thought, I feel a sense of relief. I feel better. And focusing on that feeling so that you reinforce the process you just went through. And then again, so the feelings are often the first thing noticed. And so it's okay, right? Because thoughts are tricky, and just tap into that and work backwards and then work forward again. Okay, so work backwards to the thought and then look at where, how that leads to the emotion and then the behavior and the result. Also, that these feelings may come up physically, right? So some people are very aware of their emotions. Some people are more aware of their physical body. So they might notice a headache coming on, or a stomach ache, or their heart racing. Again, if you have children, this is especially true for them, because they haven't really learned that level of self-awareness yet, and they haven't learned that emotional vocabulary yet. So kids will experience anxiety, but they'll tell you that they have a stomach ache. And so this is a good way of kind of helping them tune in as well. Not that they can never get a stomach ache, right? Freud said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. I'm going to say that we kind of went through this already. I already used the example as well of waking up in the morning and how you're feeling. asking yourself what thought is going through my head, how does it make me feel, and what does it make me want to do? And asking yourself questions like, is this helpful? Do I want to think and feel this way? If I don't work on this right now, what's the rest of my day going to look like? Asking those challenging questions can help motivate you to do the rest of the process. Here's something important for you to know is that when you are reframing these thoughts, it's important to reframe them into something that you can believe. Okay, sometimes, people who use affirmations will make an affirmation that their subconscious just can't accept yet. It's just so far from where they are, and they're trying to make this big leap that the reframe or the affirmation will not work because your brain can't accept it. And that's why I also say, it can be positive or neutral because it depends really on how low you're starting. And I compare this to a ladder, and they are called ladder thoughts, and I'll explain. So if you're at the bottom of the ladder, right, you would not expect yourself to be able to jump from the bottom of the ladder to the top of the ladder. And that's what we're doing when we overstretch. We are trying to make this leap that we just can't do, right? And we're going to fall. So the ladder has rungs, and these are your ladder thoughts. And you can ask yourself, what is the next best thing that I can think or believe? And then you climb that ladder. As you start to reframe, as you start to believe a new thought, then you challenge yourself to stretch a little bit more, asking that question, what's the next best thing that I could think to improve this situation and that I can believe? And again, sometimes that's something that's just neutral instead of negative. Noticing too how the reframe wants you to take different action. We talked about the anxiety leading to avoidance. And really the only way to get over anxiety is to not avoid, because when we avoid, it reinforces that belief. See, I needed to avoid that to keep myself safe. So it's really about, okay, if I think this thought, what action am I willing to take? And is that a better result? You have to really question yourself and not take these thoughts or beliefs as true. You have to be willing to challenge them. So everything I've described is very simple, right? But not easy, because these are ingrained habits. And it really does take that consistency and repetition, that commitment to, I want to think differently. Some ways that you can build that in are to have checkpoints during the day. So you might set like an alarm on your phone to go off at certain times of the day, and then you just do a check-in. How am I feeling? And it's great if you're feeling positive, because you can also backtrack. Oh, I'm feeling really happy. I'm feeling really joyful. What is the thought I'm telling myself? I did a great job on that presentation I just did, or I'm really proud that my, child got first chair in band. Whatever that might be, it's just as important to be able to recognize those. And so it doesn't have to be a negative when you're backtracking and practicing. But again, the consistency and the repetition. So if you're not going to remember to check in using an alarm, using some kind of reminder in your environment, it could be a quote on a sticky note, in your office. Oftentimes, what I recommend with my female clients is to have, say, a piece of jewelry. I have this red bracelet, and when you see it, that is the reminder of kind of checking in with yourself. Where am I at? How am I feeling? What's the thought? the problem solving piece, is it working for you? Is it not working for you? If it's not working for you, how come? Maybe it's difficulty in identifying the thought in the moment. Journaling can help with that too, right? If we just free write, a lot of times that stuff will come up for us and we can unbury that. But thinking about, what can I do differently? Maybe I need to use more of my detective, or maybe I need to use more gratitude. Thinking through the process. Evaluation, again, that's that, hey, is this working for me? With the problem solving, you're going to enter some challenges that, that are harder to master. And it's important to acknowledge your efforts, right? Just because we're not getting the result yet that we want, we really want to reward the effort, because then you'll repeat the effort. If we just focus on, I didn't get what I wanted out of this, we're gonna stop pursuing. But it's that conditioning reward with the effort, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. And finally, the accountability piece. I think we all know that for most of us, it's easier to keep our word to someone else than to ourselves. And having someone, maybe someone in this group today that you can check in with, and, are you keeping your gratitude journal? Are you checking in with yourself throughout the day? How's it going? Doing that problem solving together can be really helpful. Also, hearing your thoughts out loud. Right? How many times have we had a thought and we're like stuck on it, and then when we say it out loud to someone else, we're like, oh, that kind of sounds ridiculous or silly. So practicing that, you can do that with yourself, right? Alone. You can also do that with your accountability buddy. And so you have these checkpoints together and can problem solve it together. The last challenge for you, and you'll have to take this one home with you, right, is to choose one belief or thought that you're going to focus on changing, right? In the first challenge, we took the process all the way through of awareness. Now we're going to focus on strategy and accountability. And what are your takeaways from this? Like, what's the thought that's really tripping you up? And I would write this down, right? I would write down what the thought is. Take yourself through the process. What's the feeling? The whole thing, the behavior, the result. And then I would work through the reframe and the strategy, and then pick your accountability buddy. I would write it all out. When we write, it does something different in the brain. It ingrains it differently. And then having that accountability person will help you stick to it. But I would just start maybe with one belief or thought that is most pressing to you right now. If you try that for a while, say 30 days, and you don't feel like you're making progress, you might have to step back the thought, just like with the latter thoughts. If you're trying one that is really well ingrained, you might want to start with a less ingrained but pressing thought. Just a couple things that I want to offer you. If you go to my website, there is a free gift on how to sustain peak performance. And if you're interested today in kind of what you saw with our two wonderful volunteers, I can offer you a 30-minute mindset consultation. And here is my contact information if any of you would like to get in touch. So I want to thank everyone very much. And I think Kathy will send out my contact information as well when she sends out the participant list and that information, the slides.
Absolutely, Donna. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for guiding us through such an important session today. You know, all of my takeaways are the importance of, we really do need to make setting our mind a daily practice, right? So creating those daily practices and rituals that work for us as individuals. And then the tips to do so were great, and you're all going to get them in the handout materials. I love the building and the daily pulse checks. I really like the idea, Donna, of setting the alarm to do that, because I might think it and plan to do it early in the morning, and then our days get away from us. So thanks for that. And we all know the power of having an accountability partner. So whether that's that could be a colleague, that could be a close confidant or friend or your spouse. But again, that just helps propel and take it to the next level. So thanks so much for that. Okay, well, I encourage you to take advantage of Donna's generous offer. The tips are on the website, so go to the website and download those. And if anybody wants to experience what our friends did live in the session today, Donna's masterful at that. So take advantage of that. I want to remind you that our next career management group session will be on March 3rd. And our topic is leveraging LinkedIn and your personal brand with Professor Kelly Kellen from Aurora University. So join us for that. FEI is also hosting a virtual panel discussion on growing like a weed, the fast-paced cannabis industry. So a great opportunity to really learn about the industry. We've got John Paul, who many of you know, helped moderating the panel. He's a CFO in that industry. That'll be a very interactive and informative session. That's February 17th from 4 to 5 p.m. And you can register for all of these events at feichicago.org. Again, and for our new members and guests on the call today, please take advantage of the 6-month trial membership or refer that to your friends. And you can do that by reaching out to Susan at fei.org. And we'll follow up this presentation with an evaluation as well as the participant list in the presentation. We value your feedback. So please do participate. And with that, we bid you good day and have a great rest of the day.